Hello, everybody, and welcome to What the Hell Should I Watch? I'm Steve Stebbing, riding solo this week as Chloe sits this one out. We are the weekly rundown of what we're watching, which may become something you're watching. And, I kind of had Inside Out 2 planned to go ahead as the number one film this week, but Chloe brought it that week. But I do have a little bit of thoughts on that one that I'll get towards the end of the episode. So I had to struggle with something fresh this week for the episode. Yes, that's right. Fresh for your eyeballs. The first movie this week is a film called Thelma. When 93-year-old Thelma Post gets duped by a phone scammer pretending to be her grandson, she sets out on a treacherous quest across the city to reclaim what was taken from her. Starring June Squibb, Fred Heshinger, Richard Roundtree, Clark Gregg, Parker Posey, and Malcolm McDowell. Written and directed by Josh Margolin. And this is such a fantastic little film. So charming, such a great performance from June Squibb in her first leading role performance. She really smashes it, and it's like one of those old people scam movies, which is funny that it came out the same year as The Beekeeper. But essentially, Thelma gets a phone call from her grandson, that he is in jail and needs her to bail him out and bring cash to the bail bondsman, which is of course BS and just a scam. So it goes on like this like sort of play on those high octane thrillers, but interjecting all of those old people tropes we know so well, which is hilarious. And I really love the supporting cast. I mean, Fred Heshinger is really good. And then as his parents, Parker Posey and Clark Gregg are both fantastic. But it's Richard Roundtree, who I think gets a really nice final film because he passed away 3 months before the Sundance premiere of this film. So this does serve as the last project before his death. And it's such a beautifully portrayed performance, and his character is so important to Thelma's growth as a character as well, and I really, really dug that. And this filmmaker, Josh Margolin, I can't wait to see what's next from him because I think Thelma is one of the hits of 2024, in my opinion. Next up, Russell Crowe has just got an affinity for a certain type of movie right now. This is The Exorcism. A troubled actor begins to exhibit a disruptive behavior while shooting a horror film. His estranged daughter wonders if he's slipping back into his past addictions or if there's something more sinister at play. Starring Russell Crowe, Ryan Simpkins, Sam Worthington, Chloe Bailey, Adam Goldberg, Adrian Pastar, and David Hyde Pierce. Written and directed by Joshua John Miller. And Joshua John Miller is actually interesting in the horror community because he is the son of Jason Miller, who played Father Karras in The Exorcist. Joshua John Miller also played Homer in probably my favorite vampire film of all time, Near Dark. So a lot of horror cred there. But yeah, this is a weird time for Russell Crowe's career because he, after The Pope's Exorcist, which he had this really comical Italian accent in, he is now playing an actor playing an exorcist in this new film. And I mean, it's neither a bad film nor is it a great film. It's just sort of entertaining. It's a bit ridiculous because we're talking like possessed by a demon on a haunted set, we'll say. So I think that's kind of weird. I do kind of like the randomness of the cast around him, like Sam Worthington being this one, Chloe Bailey. I do like Ryan Simpkins in this movie. But just for comparison and what the critics think of this one, The Pope's Exorcist got a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's kind of where it finished up. And this film, The Exorcism, is around a 31. I will say I was more entertained by this film than The Pope's Exorcist. I have some I have some problems with that film. Let's move on to a film that is available on your streaming device, but the sequel is yet to come, and I'll talk about that as well. This is The Three Musketeers, D'Artagnan. D'Artagnan arrives in Paris trying to find his attackers after being left for dead, which leads him to a real war where the future of France is at stake. He aligns himself with Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, the three musketeers of the king. Starring Francois Civil, Vincent Cassel, Romain Duris, Pio Marmaille, Eva Green, Louis Garrel, Vicky Creeps, Lena Kudry, and Jacob Fortune Lloyd. Directed by Martin Borbolin. And, it's this basically just a big retelling of that Alexandre Dumas story that we've seen time and time again. Even Disney had a crack at it with Charlie Sheen. Was it Charlie Sheen, Kiefer Sutherland, Gabriel Byrne, Oliver Platt? I want to say John Malkovich was in that movie too. I mean, we've had a lot of the Three Musketeers. We even had a really terrible Paul W.S. Anderson one with Mila Jovovich playing Milady in that one. But this is the epic French cinema right here. This is them trying to really beef up this story. They split it into two films that were filmed back to back, all filmed in France. This first film, D'Artagnan, is, as you guessed it, very, very based around D'Artagnan's story. The second film, which I don't think is streaming anywhere yet, is based around Milady. This film you can watch on Crave. Even though all the menus and stuff are in French, there is an English subtitle track that you can watch. And the action sequences are really solid. The shooting of this film is epic because it was done by Nicholas Bolduc, who did Enemy for Denis Villeneuve. He also did The Hummingbird Project and Two Lovers and a Bear for Kim Nguyen. And coincidentally, his next film is a French adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo. So I guess he's just going through and hitting all the Alexandre Dumas hits right now. But the reason I watched this film is the fact that it has big star power like Vincent Cassel and Eva Green in it, who I love both of them. But I mean, the cast around them, I mentioned at the top, international favorites. French and international favorites like Romain Duris and Louis Garrel and Vicky Creeps, who I don't think I've seen a bad performance from her before. I really, really dig her work. But I mean, there are dry patches in this movie that may take you out of it from here and there, but the action scenes really do work. And if you're a little bit of a sucker for a French film like I am, you might end up enjoying this one. And again, it is available on Crave. Let's switch it up a little bit and get to your home discs. That's right, on the Blue this week, and this one is kind of release sensitive, I guess I would say, because his new film is in theaters right now, The Bike Riders, but now on Blu-ray, glorious Blu-ray, the directorial debut of Jeff Nichols, Shotgun Stories. Set in Arkansas, this poetic and powerful film directed by Jeff Nichols of Mud and Take Shelter tracks a blood feud that erupts when two sets of half-brothers come to blows at their father's funeral. Starring Michael Shannon, written and directed by Jeff Nichols. And I remember first seeing this film when I worked at the video store and I rented this and really, really dug into it. It's slow. It's very quiet. A lot of the big stuff they cut away from, but the resonance of each scene is always there. And I mean, I'd seen Michael Shannon multiple times before this, but I really feel besides Bug, I want to say this was his first real leading work. And I was really really blown away by this film and re-examining it and seeing where Jeff Nichols came from and now what he's done with Take Shelter, Mud, Midnight Special, Loving, and now Bike Riders, which I still have yet to see. It's just humble beginnings, and the beginning footprints of a really, really, really solid filmmaker. And it's interesting to know that this film took a long time. It came out in 2007, but was actually completed in 2004. So it sat in kind of like a limbo, trying to get released for 3 years. So I think that's really, really interesting. And it's also the debut of an actor I really, really like named Michael Abbott Jr. He does a lot of Southern films, but he's done so much great stuff since this. I mean, big one. He was just in Killers of the Flower Moon just recently, but he was also in The Dark and the Wicked, which is an incredible and a horror film that really gets under your skin, and The Death of Dick Long, which is a film that I saw at the Vancouver International Film Festival that year. The year that it came out, and it is a hell of a film, and one that honestly, some of the plot points in it you'll never see coming. It is just so brilliantly done, and it's done by one half of the Daniels, and yes, the Daniels that did Everything Everywhere All at Once. The same. I think it was Daniel Scheinert did that one. So I think that one's really worth checking out, but I don't think it's streaming anywhere that I know of. And next up is me digging back into my Criterion collection after watching Seven Samurai. I decided to continue down the numbered field and ended up in the hundreds at Mona Lisa. A man recently released from prison manages to get a job driving a call girl from customer to customer. Starring Bob Hoskins, Kathy Tyson, Michael Caine, and Robbie Coltrane. Written and directed by Neil Jordan. And this is a film that out of the Criterion collection, I mean, a prestige bunch of films that I had never seen before. And I kind of felt like I had done myself a disservice by not seeing this, especially being a fan of an actor like Bob Hoskins. And he brings it in this film. This might be probably one of my favorite performances he's ever done at this point, because George is such a well-rounded character and so quickly on into the movie. He's a character that's also seeking a sort of redemption, but he doesn't know how, and he doesn't really know the world that he's living in anymore after release from prison. But he knows his relationships, and he knows the ones that he still has and the ones that he's lost and the ones that he needs to get back. And that's really interesting. His dynamic with Kathy Tyson is really great. Michael Caine can play sleaze with a sophistication that is unsurpassed. There's something iconic about Michael Caine, and also totally idiosyncratic. And there's only one Michael Caine, and he is definitely on display in this film. And I will also say that that Neil Jordan has an ability to craft a downtown London noir that is vibrant and lively, and there's something about the craft of Neil Jordan and just how varied his scope is that I can really, really get behind. So why it took me so long to watch Mona Lisa, I really have no idea. I'll also say that Bob Hoskins was nominated for an Academy Award for this film. He did end up losing to Paul Newman for Martin Scorsese's The Color of Money, which was the sequel to The Player. And I have to mention the cinematography for this film is really great, which kind of adds to that noir style I was talking about. That's because it was shot by Roger Pratt, who did a couple films with Terry Gilliam, including The Fisher King and 12 Monkeys, and as well as he shot the 1989 Batman for Tim Burton. So Roger Pratt's kind of a movie god in my minds a little bit, because at least two of those three films I mentioned are just absolute all-timers for me. Alrighty, so let's check out what's on the Netflix, what's on the Paramount Plus. Well, you know what? I don't know. I got a list of stuff, so let's just get to the pile. That's right. The streaming pile is upon us yet again. The first film, actually, this film kind of fell out of my radar when I was trying to plan the show last week, and I totally forgotten that I had taken it in the week before release and wanted to do the review coinciding with the release, but I failed. So it's number one this week. This is Black Barbie. Tracing the origin of the first Black Barbie doll to the filmmaker's aunt, who was asked why Barbie couldn't look like her, this documentary explores her quest for representation and diversity. Written and directed by Lugera Davis, available on Netflix. I think that this is a very interesting film and an interesting topic, especially to talk about just shy of the year mark for when the big Barbie movie came out last year, especially because that movie celebrated Black Barbie in a way because Black Barbie was president, played by Issa Rae. So I think it's funny that we're now examining when the first Black Barbie was kind of the first actual Black Barbie, not just Barbie's friend. And that's an issue that's kind of tackled in this one. This is a Shondaland release, I guess part of the big Shondaland deal that Netflix did, which sounds like maybe, hey, like, cause she's an interview subject to this one too, Shonda Rhimes is, but it thinks like, oh, maybe this is a giant overreach. But you have to keep in mind, in case you didn't know, is Shonda Rhimes actually has a Barbie fashioned after her, so she is part of the Barbie line, and thus Shonda Rhimes is a Black Barbie herself. So I think that is interesting to add a dynamic to add to this, and to have people that are part of the interview subjects that actually have been made into Barbies, because there are a few other athletes and stuff that appear in this one, athletes, musicians, ballet dancers, and things like that. I do have to say, like, I was very interested in the story and where it was all going, but the way in which Davis chooses to tell the story, the flow of it, I feel like the timeline of when we got Black Barbie, when her aunt was working for the company and moving through this, I think that the way it's chopped up to tell the Talking Heads portions more of their connection to Barbie and what Black Barbie meant to them serves to give little distances from the timeline story, which I thought took me out of it a little bit. But I think the racial sociology of the whole thing is what keeps you fully engaged in it. I mean, especially the mainstream win that eventually came. It took way too long, but it eventually came. So that, little black girls could play with a Black Barbie that's not just Barbie's friend, but is actually as powerful in name and stature as Barbie herself. So, and I also didn't know the Diane Carroll influence on Black Barbie, that was kind of the prototype for the whole thing was Diane Carroll. So I thought that was interesting as well. And as far as pop culture documentaries, I think this film nails it pretty well, and it doesn't feel like a sensational or padded Netflix documentary. All right, so next up is Jake Gyllenhaal heading to the streaming. This is Presumed Innocent. It tells the story of a horrific murder that upends the Chicago prosecuting attorney's office when one of its own is suspected of the crime. Starring Jake Gyllenhaal, created by David E. Kelly, based on the novel by Scott Turow, available on Apple TV+. Yeah, so this is a new series seemingly adapted from an old 90s or 80s movie, because the Scott Turow book was released in 1987 and then adapted into a movie in 1990 starring Harrison Ford. But like Fatal Attraction, it feels like a lot of those stories are now getting the stretched out series run, almost like I'm waiting for Disclosure to be made into a new miniseries or something from that kind of office drama world. To get the re-examination. But let's face it, Jake Gyllenhaal's on fire right now. He's really, really solid. I even enjoyed Ambulance. Roadhouse was way better than it had almost any right to be, or that anybody thought it would be. That movie kind of rocks. So he's coming off a high, especially when it comes to streaming. And he's got a solid cast around him. Ruth Nega's in this one, Bill Camp, as well as his brother-in-law, Peter Sarsgaard, is in this film, is in this series as well, playing the adversary to his character. So brother-in-laws against each other for this one. I like the volatile, kind of angry dialogue in it. Everyone's kind of taking a dig at each other. And I like the fast paced nature of that. And I don't know, you kind of got to give it up for David E. Kelly, who, I mean, he was the Chicago Hope guy. I want to say Saint Elsewhere was his as well. Ally McBeal, like a lot of like network TV stuff. And then now in the last 10 years or so, he's doing a lot of HBO stuff, like The Undoing and a bunch of other shows. And he's really made streaming his world. And I'm hoping for that he has something in him like he did with Boston Legal, maybe for the streaming audience, with a little bit looser of guidelines and what he could do with that world. So. Also, coincidentally, this is the last production to be shot on the old Warner Brothers ranch lot, and it was first used for films in 1930, filmed in commercials and some TV shows. So it almost did a whole centennial before being shut down. But just 6 years shy of that mark. Presumed Innocent is the last one, and I dug episode 1. So I'm interested to see where it goes. Let's presume that it's only going to be one season. All right, next up is a biopic series. It feels like it's an import. This is Becoming Karl Lagerfeld. Follows the rise of Karl Lagerfeld in the 1970s Parisian fashion world after his rivalry with Yves Saint Laurent partner Pierre Berger, as well as his love story with Jacques de Bachur. Starring Daniel Bruhl, Theodore Pellerin, and Alex Lutz. Created by Raphael Bacquet, Jennifer Have, and Isar Pisani-Ferry. Available on Disney+. And this one comes under the Hulu banner. I think it was a French series that was transported, that was sold to Hulu and then distributed. So it might be out internationally for a while. But I mean, the general rule is if you have a series led by Daniel Bruhl, you should watch that show because Daniel Bruhl generally doesn't phone stuff in. And I like, there's a part of it that's like, hey, you know that Baron Zemo dancing scene in Winter Soldier and the Falcon? Just think of that, but him dressed like Karl Lagerfeld, because there's literally a club scene in the very first episode. So you gotta love that kind of stuff. But I really dig Theodore Pellerin as well. He was in Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, which is a phenomenal and very, very important film, which I think is Criterion as well. And he was also in the slasher film There's Someone Inside Your House, which I think it was Patrick Bryce's film. I dug that film. There's stuff that I didn't like about it, but overall, as far as horror goes, I think it is a solid and enjoyable flick. And to be honest, I don't really care much for the fashion world. Some of the fashion documentaries I've been seeing, I haven't have been super excited about, but there are stories here and there that I think are fascinating. And I think this feud between Lagerfeld and Saint Laurent are interesting, especially in how they approach it, because it is almost very amicable. That said, I don't think I was super gripped after the first episode. I might give it another one or two before I decide its fate. I don't know. So far, so good. All right, let's get Canadian. Very Canadian. And it's Jared Keeso's only remaining show, still streaming right now with new episodes. This is season 3 of Shoresy. Sees the foul-mouthed, chirp-serving, mother-loving, fan-favorite character Shoresy join a senior AAA hockey team in Sudbury on a quest to never lose again. Starring Jared Keeso and created by Jared Keeso. I mean, if you're already into Letterkenny, I feel like it's not a hard sell to get you into Shoresy. I will say, I don't know how well this series does with an American audience, because I know Letterkenny was very much picked up by American audiences and they all loved it. But I wonder, because I feel with the hockey edition and some of the dialogue that this is even more Canadian than even Letterkenny was, because Letterkenny was still relatable, I feel, on a farm level. And this Crave original is Canadian to its core. It's hockey talk to its core. I love the writing. I love the layering of it. There's a sophistication. I've always said this about Letterkenny and about Jared Keeso, that a lot of the times, especially being a Canadian show that appears lowbrow, it will always get lumped into the Trailer Park Boys category. But I believe that it has so much more of a leg up on a show like that, because there is a sophistication to the writing, and there is a daring attitude not to repeat themselves, but to use things that they've already established to bring things full circle sometimes. And Shoresy has a lot of that as well, and I really appreciate that. I love the cast of the team. I love the ownership as well. I think that those ladies are hilarious. It has a very Indigenous presence to it as well, which I think is really, really great. And again, just like Letterkenny, Shoresy just boasts a really solid soundtrack of songs that really I don't know, and probably a lot of them I've never heard before. But if they were to put out a Spotify playlist with each episode, I'd probably add it to my list. It's that good. So if you like Letterkenny and you haven't given Shoresy a chance, it's definitely more than worth your time. All right, let's get some mystery up in the joint. This is Death and Other Details. Detective Rufus Coatsworth and his protege Imogene dig for the truth on a Mediterranean ocean liner where everyone is hiding something. Starring Mandy Patinkin and Violet Bean. Created by Heidi Cole McAdams and Mike Weiss. Available on Disney+. And I've had this show for a bit. I actually had the screener sent to me by Disney, and I just never got around to it. There was just a lot of busyness at the time, but I finally, if anybody from Disney is watching this right now, I got around to it. And I really like it. I think it's colorful. It's exciting. It fits in a post Knives Out and Glass Onion world so beautifully, and especially a world where we have a show like Poker Face as well. Like it adds like a new sheen to an Agatha Christie like mystery, and I really, really like Mandy Patinkin. He's an easy sell for this series, just because I love Dead Like Me so much. It's probably one of my favorite shows of all time. At least that first season is just, season 1 and season 2 are just absolutely untouchable. I guess that would be the whole series. You get my drift, though, what I mean. It is just such a solid show. And it looks like $1 million. There's such great set design on this one. I actually happen to know one of the set decorators. I didn't know she worked on it, but our friend Amanda worked on this show, and she actually put a status out about it, because it was called something else before, and I'm totally spacing on what it was called. But she did all the work on that, and it looks really, really great. Another selling point that I didn't know until I got into the first episode is Raul Cooley from name a Mike Flanagan project. He's done them all. He's in this series playing kind of the architect and owner of the boat, and I love him, not just as an actor, but on social media and TikTok as well. He's very, very funny. And Jane Atkinson is in this one, and they were in multiple seasons of Criminal Minds together, and I know there's a lot of Criminal Minds fans out there. I never got into it, but I believe it's all on Paramount Plus now, and then the Criminal Minds Evolution is all on Disney Plus. So between the pluses, you could watch it all now. So I don't know. I would probably be inclined to watch those before NCIS. I would believe, but binging them with all those serial killers might be tough. Might be tough after a while. All right, let's finish it up for the streaming pile with Hotel Cocaine. Tells the story of Roman Compte, Cuban exile, CIA operative, and general manager of the Hotel Mutiny, the glamorous epicenter of the late 70s and early 80s Miami cocaine scene. Starring Danny Pino, Yul Vasquez, Mark Feuerstein, and Michael Chiklis. Created by Chris Brancato. Available on MGM Plus through Prime Video. And MGM Plus is a streaming service that is getting more and more interesting. I mean, it's got that Beacon 23 show. It's got Godfather Harlem with Forrest Whitaker, which is kind of the prequel to American Gangster with Denzel Washington. And this series as well, which I mean, I said the names right there. Michael Chiklis is in this one, who gets a free pass for watching anything he's in, just because of The Shield. And The Shield is one of the greatest shows of all time. Sorry, no, it wasn't Ryan Murphy. It was Sean Ryan. Sean Ryan created that show. He also did The Unit, and I don't even know what shows he's making now. Maybe Chloe can tell me what Sean Ryan's been up to. I don't know. But The Shield was an all-timer and a one-of-a-kind show, and which got us Kurt Sutter, who wrote on that show and played a crazy character, who then made Sons of Anarchy. And then Sons of Anarchy ended, and then Mayans MC came out, and Danny Pino, who plays Roman in this series, is actually from that series. But now he gets the leading role. Yul Vasquez is a character actor that's been around forever, so it's cool to see him get this kind of work. And Mark Feuerstein, I mean, I watched way too much of Royal Pains on the USA Network. Like, I watched too many episodes of it. It was cheesy, corny. It wasn't very good. But to see him get like a gritty, like Scarface type of series going, yeah, I'm into Hotel Cocaine. Episode 1 set it up pretty nicely. Chris Brancato is the creator, like I said. You might recognize that name because he is the guy that did Narcos and Narcos Mexico. So he's already kind of knowledgeable in the cocaine world, whatever you want to call it. Like, he knows what he knows the storytelling that he's doing. So he's just doing it in a different way with this series. And like I said, so far so good. And you got Chiklis playing CIA with a good old mustache. So yeah, I am absolutely digging this show. I'm really interested to see where it goes. Is it enough to pay for a completely separate subscription for MGM Plus? I don't know if we're there yet. I think they need a few more shows in their repertoire before it makes that monthly charge, I think. All right, I'm going to get us out of here in a couple of minutes. I just got a few reminders. Yes, this week's reminders on 4K and Blu-ray this week is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. It feels like just like yesterday when both Chloe and I got to review this film. We did so on the March 29th episode. We both generally liked it, but had a bit of nitpicks to it. So maybe if you're on the fence about it and unsure about if you wanted to pick it up and add it to your Ghostbusters collection, give it a view there. Also, and this is a holy grail now in my collection, the 4K cover is glorious, as is the movie inside. But Monkey Man is out this week. This is Dev Patel's directorial debut, and damn near a perfect freaking film. Some gorgeous and delicious reds, especially in the final scene, and some really insane pieces of representation and action, and a pretty much B-roll of why Dev Patel could and should be the next James Bond. And I'm going to get Chloe to give her thoughts on this movie next week, because she hasn't yet had the chance this week. And I know she has a deep love for this film as well. So I want her to share that with the audience. The special features include an alternate opening and ending, as well as feature commentary with Dev Patel himself. So that is really good selling material, especially if you've already seen the movie and love it as much as we do. The other one is, and I also myself reviewed that on an episode, on the April 12th episode. And also something I reviewed just a couple weeks ago, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare is now out on Blu-ray, a highly recommended film. I reviewed it on the July 7th episode. This is Guy Ritchie's new film with Henry Cavill. I team up with them after The Man from U.N.C.L.E. And this is gleefully killing Nazis to a somewhat true story. It's really, really all the bases I can give it. I still really enjoy it, but again, I'm only a few weeks out of watching it, and does it stand the test of time? I don't know. Ask me in a couple months about it, and I'll tell you then. Before we go out, and before I give you a little idea of what we're going to talk about next week, I did get the chance to see Inside Out 2, so I'm butting in. All right, butting into myself. I don't know if this segment works when I'm by myself, but I saw Inside Out 2, like I said last week and probably the week before. I wasn't a huge fan of Inside Out. Maybe I was jaded at the time and just not receptive to this Pixar storytelling, but I felt that there was a lot more that was relatable about Inside Out 2, especially with the addition of anxiety and embarrassment, and of course ennui, played by Adele Exarchopoulos from Blue is the Warmest Color, and I mean a handful of other incredible French films. I actually really enjoyed this film, and which is weird because I went to see it by myself in a theater full of families, and wasn't weirded out by the whole experience. I think it's got a poignant story to tell. I do see where Chloe was talking about that it does feel like it is retreading some elements from the last film, but Lewis Black steals every scene he's in. There's one emotion that keeps trying to come out and they keep shooing back that cracked me up every time she appears. And I kind of felt like this was a bit of Pixar getting a bit back on track. And as far as box office wise, it's a hit. It's a success. So in some ways, maybe Pixar's back. But I had a few, like, because Elemental, I liked it. It felt like a little drop in quality, but I'd say we're on a rising consistency with Inside Out 2. And maybe if you didn't like the first film and you're avoiding this one, give it a chance, because you might be surprised. All right, let's have an idea about next week. That's right. The Taste of Next Week is a much anticipated film. This is A Quiet Place Day 1. It's got Lupita Nyong'o and Joseph Quinn, who played Eddie in Stranger Things. It's directed by the guy that made Pig with Nicolas Cage, which is just it's an incredible film. One of the greatest films in Nicolas Cage's career. So what's he going to do immersed in this John Krasinski developed Quiet Place universe, especially to tell the beginning story of it all? I just, all sorts of anticipation. I'm so excited to check it out. But that is next week. That brings us to the end of this week. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Threads at The Steve-led. You can find Chloe on Letterboxd at HoneyBunChloe. And you can find all of these episodes on stevestebbing.ca. If you're on the YouTube page, it is just Steve Stebbing. Please rate and subscribe. You can also find us on shiftheads.ca and also look up Shiftheads on the Facebook group as well. There's about 4,000 people there posting weird memes all the time. But that is it this week. I have an empty list. I gotta go fill it up. So until then, bye-bye.